and I knew if I didn't leave, somebody was going to die.
Welcome back to my channel. I am the one and the only Mrs. Rhodes Wilson, and you have reached Mom Chronicles. I lived in a shelter, and it was the most humbling experience that I've ever went through. Also probably one of the most gross experiences I've ever went through as well. During that time that I lived in the shelter, it was just me and my oldest son, who at that time was 2 years old. And when I lived in the shelter, I knew I was going to live in the shelter because I had nobody to support me. Not to support me, but to be a shoulder for me to lean on if I needed support me, if I could live with them, if they could help me find a job, help me with transportation. That was my situation. I had to live in the shelter and I had to do what I had to do. I lived in the shelter for an entire year, almost a year to the date from when I went to the shelter to when I left the shelter. And it was in 2008 to 2009, August 2008 to August 2009. Now, I left Michigan with the intent to go to the shelter because I knew that I had nowhere to live when I went to Chicago. Initially, when I left Michigan, I was running from a situation that I did not want to put myself into, and I knew if I didn't leave, somebody was going to die. Period. I was killing somebody. And I knew I had a child, and I didn't want him to come to visit me at the pen, and growing up without me, and then somebody else raising him and not knowing if he was getting the right treatment. This goes on as Mom Chronicles. So I opted out of that option and I decided to leave. I left Michigan with 2 suitcases, one for him, one for me, and initially the one for me had half of his stuff in it because I didn't want to leave anything. I put all my stuff in the storage from Michigan. I lost that because I couldn't keep up with the payments of the storage. So people got some nice stuff, okay? And I started this new journey, and I did not know what to expect. I had no idea of what to expect going through this journey of being in the shelter. And it gave me an insight, especially towards the end, I would never want to be in this predicament again. I wouldn't want my children to be in this predicament, or nobody I knew in this predicament, because I know how hard it is. The day I took the bus from Kalamazoo, Michigan to Chicago, Illinois, I knew in advance, like I said, I was going to be in the shelter, so I did some research a little bit. If you're homeless, what do you do? And they do have some policies and procedures, and I appreciate that. And so I knew there was a number that I had to call when I got there, and it could take between 30 minutes to 2 or 3 hours for them to show up. And I'm guessing that this was a regular thing because they would come into the bus station, call your name, because once you call the number, they would be like, okay, how many people are with you? How many children do you have? We're going to come to the bus station and we're going to call your name, and you would come to the customer service area. So I was like, cool. So I waited for about, I think it was 2 hours. It was a nice day, but it was, in the nighttime by the time they came to get me. And then they took me to the intake facility. And it was just a head building where you would go and give them all your information. And then by the time I actually got to the first shelter I lived in, it was late. It was super late. It was 1-ish. It was super late. And it took me to a shelter that was originally, it was a church, outside, it's a church, and they actually have service every Sunday, but it was a rehab / single women's / women with children shelter. Okay, the rehab was on the 3rd floor. The church was on the 2nd floor. It's also where you ate in like the back of the cafeteria. And then the basement was like where the single women and the women with children slept. Single women only stayed there for 12 hours, so they could come about 6:30, 7 o'clock, have dinner. I think it was, yeah, dinner, and then there would be like lights out at a certain time, and then they could sleep through the night, and then they would have to be up and gone by like 6:30 in the morning every day. Now, there was people with jobs that lived there. There were people, there were single, the single women had, there was some women that had night jobs. Just it was hard time, working time, get on their feet. There was a lot of single women that was crazy. They would get a check. I specifically remember this one beautiful black girl. She obviously had some type of mental disorder because she would catch her talking to herself and all that, and she got pregnant. And she had, she would talk to herself and make noises and all this other stuff. But then if you ask her stuff, she can have a whole conversation to you, but then, if you're not talking to her, she's talking to herself in the corner, things like that. And then a few months after that, I saw her stomach getting big and she got pregnant, gave birth, and then 6 weeks, a few weeks later, came back to the shelter. And, and so I'm experiencing all this with my son. And I didn't understand that, and so word on the street was she had family who she could stay with, she had a good situation with, but she kept running and leaving because of mental disorder, and coming back to the shelter every night. And they knew she would come back to this particular shelter. There was another young lady that I met, actually got kind of close with. She was 20. When I went to the shelter, I was 22. She was 21, and she had 4 children. She was pregnant number 5. Her pregnant baby and her younger 3 children were by a guy that lived like 2.5, 3 blocks away, who had a house. I mean, like I think he lived with parents or family, but he had like 4 kids with this girl. Her oldest kid wasn't his, but they were like, her oldest son was only like in kindergarten or 1st grade, and then then there was a daughter, and then there was a girl, boy, or whatever, and then she was pregnant with another girl. And before I had started school, I started school as well, because I felt like I'm not gonna waste this time. I'm gonna go ahead and handle my business. And so far I started school, and I hung with her a lot because our kids are around the same age, and she had a very good spirit. And so we would walk to her dude house, and like she couldn't go in. And my thing was, this ain't just like one baby. You got 4 kids by this dude. 1 in your belly, 3, and I couldn't understand that. So some of the experiences I needed to see like what life could be for me or for people in general. And so that's why I said it's a very humbling experience. Eventually what happened was, Chicago, it get cold, and someone called like the board of like facilities like this and told them that there was no heat in this place. Also, a lot of times the food we would eat, or they would have for us to eat, would be like 3 months expired. And I don't mean like the meal, but I mean like cereal, muffins, stuff like that. They would still be in the package, and you see the the expiration date or whatever on there. And we also had chores to do, like the kitchen and stuff like that. But going back to it being not heated, someone called like the board of like facilities like this and told them that it was not heated, or someone left them a voicemail, whatever. And when it happened, they actually came out to check, like did like a random check, because they have the right to do a random check, especially since they give you grant money, and it was freezing. And like I said, especially freezing in the basement. And at that point, they separate all the women, especially with the women and children. And so I had been there. This was probably like, this was after Thanksgiving, and so was it after Thanksgiving? Yeah, it was after Thanksgiving, before Christmas, I think, something like that. And they separated us. So they took me and my, I got it all, me and my son's stuff, and they took us to a shelter all the way out in the Hundreds. And if you know anybody from Chicago, you know the Hundreds is like deep, it's part of Chicago, but it's mainly like the suburbs of Chicago. And I didn't know the area. I'm not from Chicago. I was born in Chicago, raised a bit in Chicago since about 6 or 7 years old. But then, I moved to Michigan, so I'm not a native of Chicago. So I didn't know. And so before it got cold, I teamed up with this facility, not with this company that had a lot of resources in the communities in Chicago. And so pretty much had like a case manager. And so as soon as I got out all the way out in in deep Hundreds, I called her like, hey, they got me at this facility, and then this facility was even stricter. You had to have your doors open, you had to be up and dressed at this time. There was so many rules and regulations, because each shelter I went to had major rules and regulations. You had to eat the food that was there. You can't leave it out eating. There was so many things, and I was just like, you gotta come get it. This is it conducive? I kind of made up some stories like, oh my God, we're so unsafe at the shelter. That day, she was able to get one of the facilities, or this company's vans, and got me and my son and took us to the north side. Now the north side was actually in the city, which is where I needed to be because I needed to go to school, right? Again, I'm doing very well in school. And so they took us to the north side, and that's where I needed to be because the north side was on like a 20-minute ride for me to get to school. And so I was like, okay, cool. So this particular shelter was up north off the red line, and this particular shelter, it had rules, but not like that. Like everyone stayed in one big huge room, like a gymnasium room or like a mini gymnasium. You got bunk beds, you got to have like 2 and 3 dressers to put your stuff in. Nobody touch your stuff. You got a locker with a lock on it for like your important stuff. You got to have weekend passes. So Friday morning at a certain time you get a weekend pass, and I have to come back until Saturday afternoon. Or let's say you were gonna be making back to Monday morning, you was good. Like you could have most of the 2 shelters I was in out south. The first one with the church, and then the second one that was more like a house. You couldn't bring outside food in. This one up north, you could bring outside food in. The cafeteria area, which was huge, food wasn't too bad, but you could bring food in. There was, covered showers. There was multiple bathroom stalls. They gave you like a certain time of certain days of the week. They gave you like, your body, stuff to clean your body with, this other stuff. Like they always used to also get, companies to come in to give out gifts and stuff like that. So this was good. I was really excited to be at a place like this. And then you're like, why would you excited to be at a shelter? I was excited to be at a place like this. Was completely different than what I had been used to. Now this facility is where I learned that people don't leave the shelter, right? And because at the shelters out south, no one stayed for too long. Like I'm guessing the grimy measures allowed you to be like, oh no, I can't do this for much longer, I'm out of here, or they would do something to break the rules and you're gone. This shelter, people would shelter hop, and they would only shelter hop to the places up north. And because places up north had better facilities and a little more leniency, right? But I met a lot of stagnant women where women, oh, this is my 6th shelter. You could only stay in that place for so long because now it's time to level up. So at that point, I got in touch with another company that agency that would pay my rent for a year. Okay, so but I had to go into this other kind of like, it really wasn't a shelter, but it was a shelter. It had a lot more leniency, but it did not have weekend passes, which is because I started to stay at my friends, like places that lived in what we call the dorms of our college, right? And so I didn't want to go because it didn't have weekend passes, but this particular shelter, but it really wasn't a shelter, it was a step up. It was kind of mean that you almost out the door, like you won't be in the shelter no more. You pretty much got a studio apartment without a kitchen. And that's common when you live in big cities, where you would share the kitchen area, but you got your own bathroom, you got your own bedroom, you know, little bedroom, little whatever, living room area, and that's what it was. You could not bring food in this one, but the food in this place was actually really, really good. They had really good cooks. You did have a curfew, but you know, depending on who you are and what you needed, you could make it work for you. So what I started doing is that I started, my son was still in a stroller. Yes, he was still in a stroller. When you're in a big city, trying to walk a 3-year-old around with your book, school stuff, and his bag and all that, you got to get smart. And he, for whatever reason, when he would eat in the kitchen, he would get sick and be puking. It was just a mess. So what I started doing is I started sneaking stuff like food, like McDonald's, because I started getting aid. Now at this point, I hadn't gotten like a, what they call the welfare check before. So this is the first time I ever got a welfare check. I got food stamps here and there, you know, throughout the time, but I started getting, you know, aid. So I would go get McDonald's, and I would literally like stuff it in his, like stuff it in the hood part of the stroller, like in his jacket, like I would put drinks in my coat sleeve, like all at the bottom drawer of the dresser had nothing but like chips and honey buns and stuff that like don't stale, you know, whatever. He literally lived off of for like 3 months, from like May to August. He lived off of honey buns, juice, McDonald's, and chips because he couldn't eat the food. But eventually I transitioned out of that into my own place, to a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side. I handle my business. The experience allows me to never forget to where I come from. People be like, you don't know where I've been through. No, people really don't understand. Like, they see me now, and I had to fend for myself. I had to, you know, handle it. I remember there was times on a train, you know, Chicago. One of the biggest things, negative things about Chicago, is you can get yourself robbed, stabbed on the train. And I used to be so exhausted from going to school, you know, staying up most of the night, doing homework with her after he went to sleep, you know, because my day was full from, you know, traveling, taking him, going to school, picking him up, you know, traveling back to the shelter, getting him lying down and in bed. So once he was asleep, I would be up studying and drafting, draping, sewing, stitching to 4 o'clock in the morning. I gotta get him up by, you know, 6:45, 7 o'clock, so we can, you know, grab breakfast and get him out the door to go to school. And I would fall asleep on the train. Not, you know, God had us covered that nothing ever happened to us, and I'm so grateful for that. And I never, you know, forget that. I don't ever forget that, because it carried me to where I am now. And so that was my experience of living in a shelter. If you do not have to go to the shelter, don't go. Stay with family and friends. Do what you gotta do and get back on your feet. If you absolutely have to, you know, get yourself together. Do what you gotta do. Plant your 2 feet, 10 toes down. Let's do it. If you have not been here before, please do not leave this video without giving it a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. If you have had an experience where you've lived in a shelter, regardless if it's 5 minutes, 5 days, an entire year, comment down below, or shoot me a DM, you know what I'm saying, letting you know that you've had that experience, because it's people out there, it's tons of people out there. A lot of people you don't know that's probably close to you that have had that same experience. Alright, be sweet.